some of the in-house training stuff, but it always is good to give people that recognition, and it's kind of to just kind of continue, because this is where kind of like where I jump in at it. As far as the ECT board, our last meeting, we just kind of did a capstone, kind of where they were at and where we're going to take them to. So now I guess I get to lay back on my education kind of foundation, and now and kind of train them to be able to go to different offices and actually be kind of the ambassador or be kind of the front person for putting together these racial equity plans. Um, so our next training, which is next week, we in ECT, we're going to actually kind of some low hanging fruit. I've kind of given them all an assignment to, hey, think about some areas in your office that we want to look at. But the one thing when we've had a meeting, my first ECT meeting, they talked about the phone system that was implemented. And many people had some interesting views of this phone system and using Teams phones because they weren't part of the layout. So we're going to look at that and kind of put it in the model of what we were talking about in doing the racial equity plans, so people can kind of see how we go from a perceived problem and how we kind of lay it out and see if there's solutions to that and what we could have done and lay that out differently and to take in consideration as far as people who may have some deficiencies when it comes to some technical stuff or have some disabilities that may not have been thought of when the system was put out, or even the way it was the people honestly feel like they weren't trained that well on it. So I think a lot of it too is taking into some of the generational things too. So when we start looking at diversity, we have to look at things from a big macro view, because sometimes we get kind of caught up in the view of the skin tone. We don't think about where people came from and the things that we don't see above the surface. So that's kind of like one of my charges, is kind of walking them through that process. But also when it comes to the ECT group, it's going to be training them as far as being comfortable and speaking in front of people about some of these different things that we covered. So kind of thinking about it in a way that's going to be non-threatening, that's going to be something where people get any kind of like become defensive over, but we want to make sure that they see us that we're all part of a solution to trying to change problems. And as far as with the diversity advisory board, with them trying to make sure they understand their charges as a board, one of that groups charged us to review ordinances. The first one we're going to jump on is the human rights ordinance. So basically, I've come up with a template that they will use to kind of go through this ordinance and kind of think about how is this impacting marginalized communities? Is the language used in this ordinance consistent with the language that we use today? What needs to be added? How does it impact people? So I've given them like 7 different questions to look at. So that will be like our first initial like chance in jumping into that. But also with that group, them being an advisory group, for them to understand their role and if they're going to be an advisor, how they can have their subcommittees and come up with different recommendations, but putting those recommendations into kind of a format that where they can bring it to HRCS. So HRCS can kind of become kind of the champion for that recommendation so it can navigate through your area, legal, and also through the mayor. So hopefully it'll, basically kind of facilitate or kind of like spark change. So my main thing with that board right there is I call it 3 Ps. Take the passion to understand the process to get a change in product. So that's my because everybody's so passionate. And, but kind of getting people to understand the role of an advisory board as opposed to a direct board. I don't want to call it, I'm probably using the wrong definition, but certain boards we're all on and we can go in, we can actually say, if we want to do this, let's do it.
Governing board.
A governing board or a board that actually has decision making. So kind of keep that energy and kind of get them to understand that if you lay it out correctly and bring it to us, then we can go champion it for you, as opposed to trying to skip steps in the process and come right to, I'm sure you all walk in the store and people run up to you like, we need to do this, we need to do this. But then they have to understand is that, okay, you need to lay it out in a way so I can go and, it's almost like being a good instructor. I feel like I know the materials when I can actually sit down and teach somebody the materials, because that means I know it organically inside and out. So like I said, those are kind of what we're doing now. My thing now is to kind of move this thing from them having that knowledge base to moving it to where they can actually go out and champion it, but also in our areas as far as in the office, thinking about what we can do as an office to kind of make sure that we're not missing the beat when it comes to different cultural and heritage months and things like that, and that make sure that we're part of a lot of these different celebrations. And I do have some upcoming meetings with some of the Juneteenth people because I'm still trying to figure out 2 Juneteenths in the same week for the same community. So I'm trying, I know it has its history and stuff like that, but for me, it's just, I think that's probably one of the advantages of coming from the outside. You see things that are a little bit different. You go like, why? You ask questions and people aren't so mad when you ask those questions. So I think that, understanding that we all have a shovel and we all have to dig, we all need to, make sure we go to work and get our hands dirty. I think that's the thing that's really going forward from our office.
Thank you. So, for me, it's a little frustrating, not because of anybody or any person or group or anything, but it's because we all want to do things and we all have good ideas. Well, maybe all not, because I don't know if I have any good ideas. Just like, here's a great idea to push equity, diversity, and inclusion forward. But that's why, we have you and Mayor's Racial Justice Equity Force and so many other groups and people and organizations. It's just that how do we turn it into something tangible? Where I see the grid, which I like, where it's metric measures, where it says how you're gonna, number of people, number of students engaged in the program, that's kind of great that that's built in here. It's just that it's so easy with this topic. It's easy and hard. It's easy to talk, grand things, and I'm very guilty of it myself, but it's harder to put it on paper, make a plan that's this is what we're doing, this is what we did, this is what we're doing, and this is the outcome and the measurements.
I agree with that. So one thing I did fail to mention is that on June 27th, we are having our celebration of diversity that we will invite the whole city board council to. That's going to be downstairs, and the mayor will give updates on his DEI initiatives for the past year. We'll also probably speak also, but it'd be great if you all are part of that. Actually, the 27th of June from 4:30 until 6:30. It's going to be right downstairs. I know in the past they've done it and it's kind of been a lukewarm kind of I don't want to say reception, but it just hasn't been that grand. So hopefully this year we can kind of open it up a little bit, get some few food trucks or get some food there and get some different performances and maybe have it being a community celebration. Um, so that's something that really our focus. That was I'm mad we didn't have our meeting yesterday for the advisory board. And that was like one of their charges too. You know, one thing I always know when people say that what do we do? I say we do the work. So once you give people work and the work is done, you can see they actually have a tangible product. They can say this is what we worked on. So that was one of the initiatives that that group is going to jump on, or at least now I have to go to the table with the already recipe, already made cake to show them this is what the cake's going to look like. And you have anything to add? Because our next meeting may not be until June if we're not able to reschedule. But that's something that like that. But also when it comes to diversity and just to kind of continue on what you were saying, I mean, one thing about diversity is everybody's an expert. So what you sit up and tell, it's like everybody can make eggs. Everybody can tell you how to make the perfect eggs. But with that being said, we all have to go in the kitchen and start doing that cooking together. And I always try to tell people to think about the one thing that you do each day that moves DEI forward in your area that you have control over. And it doesn't have to be these grand things all the time. Sometimes it could just be talking to somebody from a different background. Sometimes it might just be helping somebody out. You know how many times I've gone to the elevator in our area where somebody had a question because they didn't read the ledger that tells you which floor they're supposed to go to, and just to help somebody out. I mean, it can be big or small. So I think that when we start, you know, like I said, we're really trying to move this thing forward. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, that's my title. I have to do it kind of. So.
And if I can add, DEI is not the kind of work that happens fast. It's important that it's sustainable. Otherwise, you don't have anything. And anytime somebody new comes in, it either goes away or it looks significantly different. Looking different is not as bad as going away. We have a mantra. DEI work is an ongoing process that requires continuous effort, reflection, and collaboration. It doesn't happen quickly. And everything that we have attempted to do so far has had to happen from the ground up. Whereas most committees are already existing, we had to create these committees. We had to create the ECT. We had to create whatever it is that we're doing, the plan. And so nothing happens fast. And in the process of doing it, you all know how long it took us to get that ordinance passed. Well, you might not know, but I know you know how long it took us to get that ordinance passed for the DEI board. You know, and the foundation had to be built. Not just for the DEI board, but also for the ECT, because what you don't want is to have people who are going to be your trainers not able to deliver the same concepts that you're hoping to impart. Otherwise, they could be imparting anything. So you got to make sure everybody's on the same page. So it's a process. And I will also say, and I say it with a lot of pride, we took this work on and still continue to maintain our current jobs. So it was not anything that one person could do. We all had to pitch in. So it's making it happen. And that makes me proud, to be honest with you. I will also tell you that.
And we did not purposely not give you this, but this was the thing for our meeting. That's my update for our meeting that with the advisory board.
Yesterday.
So we didn't have the meeting, so I'd rather pass it out later on after we have the meeting, as opposed, because there's some things in there that changes from my first meeting that I would rather share with them first before getting other people. So I know she looked at like, why we can get a copy, but no, just that's why, because it's things in there that I wanted to, as my update to them, that we were going to kind of go and process through together. So that's why I didn't bring any copies of that to the meeting here. I'd hate to have somebody get a copy of like, hey, did you have this at your meeting? And then they like, just so once we have our meeting, or when, once we decide if we're not going to have a meeting, I'll make sure you get a copy of that.
Team members, anything? One more area, one more. We talked about the human rights ordinance a little bit today. I guess just for my selfish education and maybe anyone else that's listening, can you give us kind of like a super high level overview of ordinance and its like current status, and then maybe like any enforcement on the ordinance? Because I'm not aware of any instances where somebody's like put in a complaint or, you know, try to violate or have anybody held accountable or brought up under the ordinance. Has there been any?
Very, very few. And those that we may have gotten that were significant would have gone to OCA once once our part of the investigation was completed. If it was founded, it would have gone on to them. But no, we might get some, and once we followed up with them and were able to talk to them, it just kind of petered. They didn't carry it any further. So we haven't had anything massive.
And again, I know there's no stupid questions, but I'm going to ask one. Again, like the overview of the ordinance, like kind of an example of, I know there's very few, but like what could a citizen do in like a hypothetical situation? You know what I mean? Like, for example, you may have got my email. I got an email from someone on East Lansing's HRCS that said, I got a person who was discriminated against by a business in Lansing, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to do do you have a human rights ordinance and how to do it? I kind of like, oh,
Yeah. It's part of that complaint process. And I did speak with her, and we both tried to reach the person that had the concerns, the father that had concerns about how he and his family were treated at one of the local stores. He didn't want to follow through. And when she spoke with him, he didn't want to follow through. So that was one of the ones that just kind of petered out. That was a matter that could have been taken up. We would have gone in and done the investigation, and if it was founded, we would have taken it on or forwarded it on to OCA to go whatever the next steps are.
And again, I don't know if you know, maybe OCA might know, but the next step. So let's just say in this hypothetical that the Lansing resident thought the business was discriminating against them, and they brought it through, and it didn't peter out, but they went through and there was an investigation. And then then what happens if there's like a determination that a business is some type of discrimination, not a business receiving city money, but a business? Like what kind of jurisdiction do we
I don't have the ordinance
I think
with
the
me.
first one is it's a fine.
Contained in 297.11 sub D, if the department determines that a complaint and the preliminary evidence gathered indicates a violation of the section, and at that time, City Council designates a hearing officer to conduct a hearing within 90 days after completion of the investigation. Everybody receives notice of the hearing. There is an opportunity for testimony, and then the hearing officer makes findings of fact and a recommendation based on the testimony and evidence at the hearing. And then there's several available remedies, which are contained in 297.13.
Do you mind the remedies?
Ceasing the illegal conduct cited in the complaint, taking steps to alleviate the effect of such illegal conduct, providing that the respondent apologize to the claimant, closing the matter based upon a mediation conciliation agreement of the claimant and respondent, requiring the respondent to pay damages for injury or loss, hiring, reinstating, or promoting the claimant with or without back pay, or providing such fringe benefits as the claimant may have been denied, selling or leasing of housing or dwelling unit in question to the claimant, admitting the claimant to a place of public accommodation or extending full and equal use of enjoyment of said place of public accommodation, paying for some or all of the claimant's costs incurred at any stage of review, posting the explanation of and requirements for compliance with this chapter, dismissing the complaint, and imposing costs against a claimant for a frivolously filed claim. So it's pretty broad options.
Thank you. And I guess my last comment on it, and I'll open up again, because it's not anything that we're necessarily talking about, but it just seems like that ordinance, with all its good intentions, has so few people going through it. I think I'm not aware of any, especially when it says city council conducts a hearing, like it hasn't been in the 6.5 years I was here. And then I wonder, like, if we actually had a bunch of them, how strong is that ordinance, like constitutionally and everything, requiring private businesses to do X, Y, Z? It's distracted
by something that just came in. Are you asking about enforceability?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you have time, I know you're busy, if you could like let me know like a little memo on how enforceable it is. It just seems like the city wouldn't be able to require a private business to do much of any of that when they're not receiving any.
Right. I mean, so there's all of that those options. There's also an option under this ordinance for a finding of a civil infraction, which would be by an independent prosecutorial body. And that's the one where it has a little bit more enforceability, because then we would be going to a court and, you know, requesting a finding of,
It'll be City of Lansing versus XYZ for a civil infraction.
It says that a violation of any provision of this chapter is a civil infraction and shall be prosecuted by an independent prosecutor's office. So I have some question about who that would be.
Was that the penalty of $500?
No.
Could be. Well, there's a schedule. The hearing officer could refer the matter to a city or county prosecutor. They could also refer it to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, to the DOJ, to HUD. And so it's more, I would say, administrative options than purely punitive, if that answers your inquiry.
Thank you. Yes, I'd put out a call to anybody listening, somebody bring a human rights ordinance violation so we can see how it goes. We got the squad forward, I'll tell you what, we're ready. Anything else for the city? Michael?
I guess I just have one follow-up question, and this is probably for law, when we're talking about remedies that you listed and the businesses. I mean, you know, Brian touched on what can we actually do if it's a private business. Is there any variance between, and I don't think there is, but is there any difference between a business that is contracted or conducting business with the city versus a store that's on, you know, that's within the city limits? I mean, does that take a different route, or?
It could. I would say that it really depends on like what might be contained in any contract or agreement if the city is doing, whether it be grant-based or specific contracting with, and there may be something in that agreement indicating that there's generally a provision saying that they have to comply with all of these laws, including this one. And there may be, it's probably agreement specific, but there could be an avenue that gives us a little bit more control in that sense.
Thank you. Yeah, that does answer my question. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I don't think we need you for the rest of this brief discussion. Of course, you're welcome to stay, but we're just gonna pivot from here to a short discussion on things that the city council can consider and recommend. And then we're all on the same city team at this point. So, but you're excused.
I don't want to look like I'm running out of here. I'm running out of here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, committee members, I know we have another meeting today that I'm excused for because I have to coach a soccer game. Even though it is pretty close by.
Sunshine.
Much as I want to be there with you all. So just the last little discussion, we have on agenda city programs for a committee to consider. And if you all see and recall, last time we had county people here, Ms. Felix,
Police. Yeah, police.
Police. So I guess for today's purposes, instead of really going in on these, considering we have another meeting coming, let's take these home and think with ourselves, think with our constituents, whoever, and then kind of try to see if we can, as our little branch of the EDI community, see if we can have some direction like, oh, we want to go at this. Even though it sounds like all the other branches and umbrellas are working, we're just one group. So we can try to push our own ideas, or we can just kind of like dip into other ideas and encourage and, you know, talk about and direct. But unless there's anything from the committee, That's what I would recommend we do.
Yeah, and it sounds like from the last time we met to this meeting, I mean, I'm looking at a training portion. I mean, I think that is something that's being well handled.
We heard that.
Those, wheels are in motion on that. So, and I think there are definitely things, if we go over this list on our own, we'll find that our team internally is already working on a lot of these topics, so.
And then I guess maybe if we could, like, when we're going over them, try to say, okay, we're working on the health policy of, just like the county is in this version, or if we can't think of anything, we put a little note saying the city, is not doing anything there that we know of. I don't know, what do you guys think? I'm kind of open for discussion, or we can try to have the discussion later.
No, I'm okay to look through this. I think it's important to also tap into the community as far as what services they're already doing. Because I know for me, there's been some aha moments like, oh, I didn't even realize you do that training.
Right,
Like,
right.
Where has that been shown, or how do we get people to know about it? So I think giving me some opportunity to really touch base with some of the organizations that I'm already affiliated with, or that I know of, I can tap into see what they do and how that platform is addressed to the public, and see what we can do to kind of make that a little bit more robust, or make it where it's more knowledgeable. See if there's any missing pieces or any gaps. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of streamline that.
Yep. And I guess I would also want to think about, why is it that we have this superb ordinance that's never been used?
Yeah.
Because we hang our hats on it. I've heard different officials, kind of bragging about it. Like, we have a human rights ordinance. But we got to do this is another thing. But yet either no one knows about it, or they're like, oh, that's too much. Because all the stuff they're saying, I'm like, I don't think I would want to do that. I felt like I was, that's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
So why aren't people utilizing it? Is it because we don't have any violations in the city?
Or is the process just
Something wrong with it, or
A
some
lot.
other?
yeah.
I think that would be a good initiative to take on after the review of the ordinance. They flesh it out, review it, and then we can, potentially make it one of our goals to say, okay, now how do we put this forward to the community? How are, maybe that can be, something that we can assist with, or, dive into, and how we can spread the word on the ordinance and how it's used, when it should be used.
And I might have missed it. Did someone say they were fleshing that ordinance out?
Yes, they're reviewing
Okay.
that. That's one of their current tasks.
Yeah, so maybe we'll have an agenda item in the future after that time that just has us kind of review that and look at it again. And maybe there'll be some more numbers, but again, I feel like the number is zero, honestly. Like zero actually that went from the start to somewhere near the finish.
Yeah. Everyone's tapped out prior to it.
Or something else.
Mhm.
All right, anything else for the good of the committee or the group or the meeting? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 5:02.